So how do we think about an organized mind? Well, one of the best gifts that you can give your mind is actually to reduce the number of inputs that you have in your environment. Remembering these change in importance detectors that are running all of the time, try and reduce the number of inputs, both that are going to trigger those, but also external stimuli in your environment. So notifications, pings, dings, how many things you're trying to juggle at once is a massive thing. Remember that the attention switching is hugely energy sapping. So switching between things, switching your attention from one thing to the next, from next thing to the next, can be really, really taxing. So think about reducing the number of switches you have to do in a day, how many times you have to switch your attention to different things. I'm going to be sharing a raft of tips within these next few videos, but what I want you to think about with your mind specifically is think about some ways, just even a few little changes you can make to just reduce those inputs. The next thing is being very conscious aware of that you have a finite amount of resources that you can actually devote to remembering things, okay? A lot of the while there was some research done and they thought it was between sort of 5 and 9 things that you could hold in your short-term memory at any one time. It actually turns out to be much nearer 4. So think about 4, the rule of 4. You can only really hold 4 things in your mind at once. So the only way that your brain can do this is by replaying things over and over and over again, and that's how it retains it in your short-term memory. It almost like repeats it, also kind of a rehearsal loop almost. So be aware that these 4 things are having to spin in your head for you to be able to keep hold of them. Many of us are trying to hold much more than that, so a way to have a more organized brain and a lot calmer brain is just reduce the number of things you're holding in your head. Next is to-do list. So a great way you can do this is just externalize those things that are buzzing around in your head. Get them out of your head and onto paper. The productivity guru David Allen talks about this. He says your head is for having ideas, not for holding them. So work out a system of externalized lists. We've learned to write for the reason that we had too much information in our heads that we needed to hold that we couldn't actually keep track of. So get some external lists, and if you are feeling like you're in complete overwhelm, sometimes the best thing to do is just get a big piece of paper and just do what I call a brain dump. So just dump everything down on a piece of paper, get it out of your head, get that stress and adrenaline down, and then once you've got that, then you can start to work through this and looking at ways that you can actually categorize tasks and break them down. Next is categorization. Now, your brain works incredibly well by categorizing things. I'll give you an example. Think about in your head that you have, for all the things that you need to remember, so the difference between a tree and a car and your friends and your family and other people that you know and where your workplace is and all of these things, your brain does this by actually categorizing things as it remembers them. So when you think about categories, think about how clear it is for you to make a decision as to how you would categorize a cat. Okay, so if I give you the 3 categories, so I give you something on this earth is either human, an animal, or a plant, where would the cat go? It's really easy. So think about this categorization system, and you'll have different hierarchies. So going a bit further from, human, animal, plant, think about, diving into plants, for example, you then have a very easy distinction to make between things from trees to flowers. And then from flowers, you can break it down into further, so roses and daisies. And so one of the best ways to help you manage all of the information that you have to remember and keep your brain very, very organized is use this categorizing system. It's how your brain works anyway. So thinking about breaking things down and actually categorizing them into sections and groups is much easier for you to very quickly, when you have a new piece of information, decide how you're going to group it. Group it with something that's already in your long-term memory, and that can make things much, much easier. And finally, I want to reinforce the importance of sleep. A huge amount of organizing your brain happens when you sleep. We've talked about this already in the sleep guide, so do dive into that guide and find out a little bit more information. But I want to cover these sort of 3 main functions that happen when you sleep that are really, really important, and will reinforce the importance that if you feel a bit foggy-headed or you feel like you can't remember things, it might be because you're just not getting enough good quality sleep. So one of the first things that your brain does when you go to sleep is it does what's called utilization. So this is where it takes all these disparate pieces of information and ties them together into one concurrent piece of information. That means that whenever you reference each of these things, you'll be able to join all of the dots together. The next one is assimilation. So this is where your brain will start to take that utilized piece of information and connect it with other long-term memories, other things. So you remember some details about your car MOT, and that links in with your car and remembering like repairs that it's had, and you start making these multiple connections. The beauty with memory is the more connections you make, the more easy it is for you to find that information and resource it quickly when you need it. And the final one is thinking about abstraction. So this is where your brain does that amazing creative problem solving thing where you go to sleep with a problem and you wake up and suddenly the answer is right there in front of you. This is where abstraction works, where it pulls abstract bits of detail, abstract pieces of information that it's holding and remembering, and makes disparate connections between all of them. And this is where like creative problem solving, where a lot of creative people, where they're trying to maybe use inspiration from one thing and turn it into something else, make these connections during this sort of abstract phase in your sleep pattern. So this is really, really important to memory. It's really, really important to remembering things and feeling organized and being able to pull information very quickly from your long-term memory.